So e-QuestrianFocus caught up with Ernst Holtz at the South African Championships, and I'd like to ask Ernst if you could just comment and elaborate a little bit on what has happened to equestrian sport in South Africa over the past 4 decades.
Well, that's going to be a long story if you want to know all of it. What I think the major change has been in that period is that the quality of horses that is available now for our riders is significantly better than anything that we started on in the olden days. And not just in Namibia, where I grew up, but also in South Africa, where race horses that had slow sickness basically are the ones that ended up in the stables, and they were not easy to convert to become riding horses. In my part of the world, in Southwest in those days, we caught them off the felt. We broke them in a crude way, and they had upside down necks, and they had no size, nothing. They were just horses, and that has changed a lot. I see the quality of the horse here. Look, it's not where it is in Europe, but it is getting close because we have wonderful breeders that bring in the best stock, and we have riders that can take advantage of that. We also, of course, nowadays have riders abroad that campaign there, and I think that is probably the key to the progress here, that you have representatives there that pick up what happens in the middle of it all. It's like all sports. You see, whether it's our rugby players, our soccer players, our gymnasts, every sport has to go where the real action is and bring back as much as they can to this country. And I think in horse sport that applies even more because the best trainers and coaches are there. And the competition is such that you have to be very good to be successful. And if you are, like a few of our riders have been recently, we have to be very, very proud of it. Anything else you would like to know?
No, I think that's so. It must seem be quite interesting for you to have lived through the whole process and been so much part of the whole process of the development of the sport, also bringing South Africa more into the international arena with the judging, etc. It must be quite interesting for you to sit at a show like this now with well over 1,000 entries and see it all unfolding over the last decade.
Yeah, I think I'd like to compare it a little bit with our counterpart in Australia, where around 20 years ago, or a little bit more than that, I started judging. They were very much at this level where we are now, with a few horses that are able to do the Grand Prix test, or sort of doing a Grand Prix test, and with a few overseas judges coming to help, instructors coming to improve the riding, and they've progressed significantly in that period. And I think we have the possibility of doing just that in this country if we make sure that we don't just want to compete at the top, but that we also have to go through primary school and high school before we go to university. And I think that is probably the best lesson that we can learn when we are abroad. I've seen riders from here that thought they were good until they got there. And they said, oh, we've got to start right at the bottom. And they've come a long way. Yes. I can even take an example like the Smith girl. Really wasn't a very outstanding rider before she left. And she's progressed significantly. She's able to compete at international level without having to hide. And I think that to me is what's needed, and more of.
Yes. Well, that's also hopefully what's going to happen now with more of our riders being over there and coming back here on a regular basis, and hopefully indefinitely at some point in time that will influence standard further.
Well, we have experienced that with Eventus some years ago when we went to Europe with our horses, kept them in France for 6 months, and from there went to the World Equestrian Games in Lexington. And that opened their eyes. They competed against the best. They didn't win medals, but they competed successfully. And I think that is what dressage is quite able to do in time. Show jumpers have done it for many years. Show jumping, in fact, was, when I got to this country 50 years ago, was already at a high level with the Leslie Taylors and the David Stubbses and a number of the top riders in those days, Vicky Lowe and Grayston and so on. They jumped 6-foot jumps regularly. But in dressage and eventing, we were way behind. And I think we are starting to catch up.
Getting up to speed.
That is gratifying to see, albeit that some people want to leave out the hard work that you need on the way by buying the best horses and hope that they will get them to the top by themselves. It won't happen that way.
But it's also, in a way, I think, a good way to fast track the sport a little bit. If you're in a fortunate position to get something that can teach you, I think that has a huge advantage as well.
Yeah, when I was a youngster, I always said you should never give a child a school horse. It's got to learn to do it from scratch. I'm not so sure nowadays. I think you need a schoolmaster.
Definitely.
And then you pick it up much quicker in a way. But you also have to learn to train your own.
That I also agree.
Well, what else can I tell you about the days? Well, you know, in my travels, of course, I've been literally all over the world, and there is no shortcut to success. I've seen it in the States, I've seen it in Asia, where they all start at the bottom, and they all thought at one stage they can shortcut it with buying the best horses, but it doesn't happen that way. You have to serve your time in the sport, like in all other disciplines, isn't it?
That's true.
Anything?
Well, I think that was a fantastic story. Thank you very much, Ernst.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, just coming back to the horses briefly. You know, when I read up about what happened in Southwest Africa around the previous century, the 1895 to 1900, horses were brought from Europe by shipload. They shipped them to Swakopmund. There is no harbour in Walvis Bay, and they dumped the horses in the water to swim to the shore. And most of them survived. The odd one went under. But that is how the riding started in that part of the world, and some good stock came in those days.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Anyway, nowadays horses fly all over the world like we do, in a way, and that is just such an enormous jump. I wonder what's going to happen in a few years' time.
I also wonder. We hope it's going to get easier to move horses in and out. Change things a lot.
That is still our major barrier. That has actually held us back a lot. The horse sickness part of it, the rest of the world was worried about us coming to them and bringing diseases to them. In the meantime, horse flu came here from Europe or the States. Yeah. Well, yeah, major change. If I look at this beautiful arena here and look at the sport nowadays and look at what we rode on in the olden days, you can't compare. Yeah, you wouldn't even walk on this nowadays.
Ernst, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity of telling you a little bit